The Birdie Board podcast is brought to you by the Birdie Board app, the easiest way to track matches, scores, and handicaps with friends. Now, here's your host, Corey, with another episode of the Birdie Board podcast.
Welcome back to the Birdie Board podcast. This is episode 8. Only 2 more until we get to 10 episodes overall, which is pretty cool. Golf might look simple, just a ball, a club, and a target, but beneath that calm surface lies centuries of history, mystery, and character. I wrote that in my blog earlier this week about just the basics of golf, so I'm going to make that into an episode. This is for beginners who are curious about the game before their very first swing, but it's also for the longtime golfer who just loves learning about the spirit and the traditions of the game. I'm going to promise to do both a mix of stories, facts, and reflections. Going to try to cover the simple things, but also just do more of the story behind golf as well, about how did these simple terms and the simplicity of golf even start. The first thing is just golf is more than a sport. It is really interesting because it's the only sport really in the world that players call penalties on themselves. Now, if you've watched the PGA, of course, they can get rule officials involved, but they're calling those penalties on themselves. If you hit the ball out of bounds, you assess yourself a penalty. Now, in the PGA, if you don't do that, you can get disqualified, but if we're just doing a weekend round or a golf trip with some friends, it's really just the foundation of the game is the significance on honesty and doing your score right by being honest with every single stroke and every single penalty. This sport started a long time ago. So back in like the 1400s, and one of the earliest stories that came from this is King James II, who actually banned golf in 1457, over 500 years ago, because it was distracting their soldiers. It only lasted about 50 years, though, because then his grandson, James IV, lifted the ban, and he actually became a golfer himself. I think this really just shows the persistence of golf in general, and the fact that it's still around is incredible. The word golf actually comes from a Dutch word kolf, and I'm probably saying that wrong. That Dutch word just means club. So that's how we got the word golf. The word itself, they think that the Dutch sailors brought it to Scotland, and then that's kind of where we know the game came from today. So golf is played with 18 holes. Every hole is a difference in a story in and of itself. There's dunes, there's forests, there's deserts, there's links, there's a whole bunch of different types of golf courses. St. Andrews, one of the earlier golf courses, originally had 22 holes, but in 1764 they combined some of the holes into shorter ones, which got to 18. And that 18 is the number we still use today. Musselburgh Links, I believe I said that right, is the oldest course that we know of. It was built in the 1600s. We believe that Mary, who was the Queen of Scots, possibly was the first recorded female golfer, which is pretty cool. What's really unique about golf holes is a lot of people think, oh, we're playing against each other. And there's definitely an aspect of that, but your main competitor in golf is actually the course. It's every contour, every hole, every bunker, every well-placed green. Those are the things you're playing against. And if you play against that well, you're going to play against your opponent well. So the scoring system in golf, it starts with this thing called a par. A par is the expected number of strokes you should get on a hole. If you get 1 under par, that's called a birdie. If you get 1 over par, it's called a bogey. A par, a birdie, and a bogey are the 3 most common scores in golf. You can go even farther, though. So if you get 2 under par, that's called an eagle. If you get 3 under par, that's called an albatross. These are all named after birds. For bogeys, though, they don't have special names after it. You just get double bogey, triple bogey, quadruple bogey, and then they usually just say like 5 over or 6 over at that point. So where did the birdie term even come from? Well, in the early 1900s in America, it was more of a slang, and it was like that was a bird of a hole, which basically just meant it was something excellent. One of the rarest in golf, scores in golf, you may guess is a hole-in-one. It's not. You may guess it's an albatross, which is actually better than a hole-in-one. It's not. One of the best and most rare scores you can get in golf is actually called a condor. And there's only been a handful of people who have been able to achieve it. One of the first was a man named Larry Bruce, who in 1962 got a hole-in-one on a 480-yard par 5 dogleg. So he kind of cut the corner, rolled into the hole. That's the best score you can pretty much get in golf. So we've talked about a few things so far, so let's recap. We've just talked about the history of golf, the spirit of golf, the idea of like where golf came from. Golf is made of 18 holes. There's a scoring system in golf where par is the expected number of strokes, and then you can either go up or down from there. Now let's talk about the equipment. There is 14 tools you can choose. Those tools are your clubs. You can have drivers, irons, wedges, or putters, and each has its own unique purpose. So a driver is the club you take off the tee box. It is going to have the longest distance for you typically, but it's also going to be the most variable in the width of the shot. What I mean by that is you are going to be able to hit it maybe 150 to 250 yards, maybe even 300 yards long, but your variability from left to right might be 25 yards or 50 yards. As you get close to the hole, though, that variability is going to get lower and lower. Your next clubs up are typically woods. They're similar to drivers, but let's just skip straight to irons because that's kind of the most basic next step. Irons are usually the shots you take after your drives, and you're not yet very close to the hole. So you're thinking maybe 120 yards to 140, 150 yards out. Once you get close enough to the hole, you're going to start taking your wedges. Wedges can be played anywhere from 100 yards down to maybe just 5 yards off the green. Depends on the golfer. These are all just general distances, but it kind of gives you an idea. And then once you're on the green, you use a putter. That's going to be that club with the kind of a mallet look or maybe a blade look. It's going to have a flat face. Most people are familiar with putters, whether you actually know golf or not, because a lot of people have done like mini putt-putt and stuff like that. The clubs are only part of it. Obviously, we also play with a golf ball. The golf ball, it started and it was called featheries, which were boiled feathers wrapped in leather. It took about an hour to make each one, so you can imagine the pain it might feel losing one of those. And then it changed to a ball that was made of tree sap. And just that change alone added 30 yards to the distance at the time. Nowadays, golf balls have these little dimples in them, like 300 to 500 of them. And the purpose of these dimples is to reduce drag and added lift. So it gives the golf ball even more distance, but it also gives it the ability to affect the pattern of flight. So you might have seen like Tiger Woods do a big draw or a fade or something like that. Those dimples are what helps him be able to do that. Golf is also a big game of unwritten rules as well. There's a etiquette to golf that you might have heard of before, but it's not super complicated and it's a lot more relaxed nowadays than it used to be. But it is more than just skill and equipment. Golf is built on respect. Some of the rules that are kind of unwritten is repair your divots. So if you make a dent in the earth or you clear out some grass and there's only mud there, you want to repair that, put the grass back in. Some golf courses have sand for you to fill those divots with. You want to rake the bunkers. If it's not your turn and someone else is swinging, you want to stay quiet. And then you don't want to step on their putting line. It's really all about preserving the fairness of play and the courtesy to others. The origin of this is back in like the 1700s. The land was shared, and it was and because of the shared responsibility, they took time to take care of the course that they were playing. So damaging the course meant damaging someone else's chance. The next thing I've talked about in an episode before in more detail, but this is just a generalization of that golf handicap system. The golf handicap is a really cool thing where it is a genius way to have fairness in golf, even if you have two players playing each other who aren't the same skill level. It isn't an average score, it is trying to represent your potential. The actual formula is the best 4 out of your last 10 games, so 40%. If you're a scratch golfer, which means you're always shooting par, you're going to have a 0 handicap. And a beginner is probably going to be like 30. Maybe if you have some natural athletic ability, you might be able to start around 25 or something like that. As part of the handicap system, there's a course rating and a slope rating. That is trying to describe how hard a particular course is. And in golf in general, is just one of the few sports that blend competition and honesty like this. It's a really cool system that makes golf really competitive, even for people who aren't the same skill level. The average round is about 3 to 5 hours. The PGA Tour players, they take like 38 seconds per shot, so even slow play can lead to penalties, but it's this average round length of 3 to 5 hours that can really make golf relaxing for people. Every shot is a new reset. Every shot is a new opportunity. And we've talked about this before, but golf is 90% mental. It is really about the calmness of the game, the recovery, and then as you're recovering, how can I prepare for this next athletic moment I have for a shot? And then you start it all over again. And being able to maintain that for 3 to 5 hours is a really incredible feeling. Lastly, let's talk about that first shot. It is that kind of hook that most golfers have. It's that finally you had a first solid drive, that first long putt that drops. It's just that spark of joy that keeps you coming back. I think something to remember is like the average golfer loses over a ball per round. Even pros will hit the water from time to time. So it's all about just staying with it, enjoying the game. But golf rewards persistence, patience, and humor. You don't master it in a day, but you grow with it over a lifetime. So that was just kind of an intro to golf. It's, like I said, it's based off of a blog post I did a couple days ago. So if you want to read more about it, there's more there. I really enjoyed this because when I started approaching this podcast, I was asking myself, how can I teach like the basics of golf, but also say it in a way that people who know the game will still enjoy it? So that's kind of what I set out to do. So hopefully I hit the mark for this episode. A couple cool things I want to give updates on just with Birdie Board in general. We did a recent release of Birdie Board version 1.6.1. It's on the app stores right now. I made the Birdie Board logo a little bit more festive for the upcoming holidays, so look out for that. Some of the changes is I added a feedback link inside the app. This is really important because I want the users of Birdie Board to always feel like they can provide me feedback. It could be suggestions, what you like, what you don't like, bug reports. Anything and everything is welcomed, and it's what's really going to make Birdie Board better at the end of the day. Another big thing is match hosts can now manually override someone's handicap. So if you remember before, people would have to actually update their own handicaps to get it reflected inside of a round. But now that can be done manually by the match host. Another thing, this is just for consistency, the pars and handicaps section when building a round was an optional section. So I had added a little toggle to just hide it when you're not using it. So that's some of the latest updates in Birdie Board. I guess I can also talk about some of the cool marketing things I've been trying to do. The YouTube channel is doing really well right now. I just pulled it up, and if we look at the stats, let it load. Over the last like I want to say 35 days, we've gotten 57,000 views on YouTube. It's just one of the main things that I'm trying to do with Birdie Board is just building that community and getting people into golf and learning golf and making people aware of Birdie Board and the podcast. But it's honestly performed so much better than I would have expected. So you can find that YouTube channel. It's just Birdie Board, birdie_board if you want to look it up. I'm sure if you just search Birdie Board, you would probably find it at this point. But yeah, that's the episode. I hope you guys enjoyed, and thanks for listening.
Thanks for tuning in to the Birdie Board podcast. If you enjoyed it, subscribe and share it with a friend who loves golf as much as you do. And before your next round, grab the Birdie Board app, free on the Apple App Store and Google Play Store, and let it handle the scoring while you enjoy the game.